Hi, everyone, and welcome to another professional development webinar hosted by BMES. The title of our webinar today is How to Engage Industry More Effectively with Local Chapters. My name is Justin Huckabee, and I'll be your moderator today. So we're going to go over some best practices as well as some tips from both student BMES chapters and industry BMES chapters to see how to better integrate industry amongst one another to provide better professional development, recruitment opportunities, networking, and business development on both sides. So, as stated, I'll be your moderator today, and I'm part of the BMES Industry Affairs Committee, the Talent Pipeline Subcommittee. I'm also a graduate research assistant at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Furthermore, before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. So this webinar will be archived after we're complete, and you'll be notified through email shortly afterwards when that is available online to view. Throughout the webinar, you will see a function to post and submit questions. We encourage you to do that, but we will not go over those until the end of the webinar after we hear from both of our speakers today. So we encourage that and look forward to hearing from you and what you would like to ask. And finally, at the end of the webinar, there will be a brief survey. So we ask that you take that survey as it will provide feedback for future webinars. All right. So before we get started, we're going to do a few polling questions just to get an idea of how the audience is. So I ask that you please answer these questions, and we will submit the results and see where everyone stands. So the first question, which best describes you? All right, I'll close the poll in just a moment. See responses coming in. Okay, so let's see. Mostly students, mixed between undergraduate and graduate students, makes up about 50%. We have about 10-11% professors, and then quite a few industry professionals as well. So that's great. That's the exact audience we want to capture, some of the student members as well as the industry professionals. All right, let's see the next question. Do you have a BMES student or industry chapter in your area? So this can be either or. You have the option to answer both or no to neither. All right, I'm going to give a few more seconds, then I'll close the responses. All right, let's see. So the majority of you answered yes to a student chapter in the area, so that's great. There are a few industry chapters too. That's awesome. Industry chapters are a little bit newer, and they're up and coming, so hopefully that statistic will increase over time. And even quite a few you answered both to yes to both in your area, so that's really great. That's what we want. So thank you so much, and we have one more polling question to go. Are you currently a member or officer in your local student chapter or your local industry chapter? Or both? All right, I'll give it a few more seconds. Let's see the results. So again, most people are members of their BMES student chapter, and we have quite a few in industry chapters as well, probably represented by the industry professionals on the call today. So we thank you so much. And if you're not involved, we definitely encourage you to get involved in both, whatever is available or around in your area. So thank you so much, and we're going to kick this webinar off with our first speaker. We have two speakers today. So I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, Shannon Larson. She is going to talk to us about BMES student chapters and how to get involved with those and connect and network better with industry. So Shannon?
Thank you, Justin. So as Justin mentioned, I'm the president of the University of Maryland Biomedical Engineering Society Student Chapter. And so what our student chapter does is organize a lot of the bioengineering students to promote professional development is one of our main goals, get them introduced to what bioengineering is and how they can get involved and how they can make a career in it. But we also do different other events such as service events where we bring in middle school and high school students and teach them about STEM. And we do mentor-mentee programs as well as other social events. I just wanted to note that because a lot of people put that they're graduate students, our chapter specifically tends to focus on the undergraduate population of bioengineers at University of Maryland. So we do have a graduate student society that we interact with for some events. Our student chapter has 309 student members signed up on our email listserv, which is approximately 73% of our undergraduate bioengineering population. And we had 46 active members that met all of our requirements that our club set for attending a certain amount of events per year this past year. So now I want to give you a brief overview of what our industry goals are, since we really want to provide those professional development opportunities as a chapter. I broke these industry goals in for the different stakeholders. First, for the students, we want to make sure that we're introducing students to the various career paths. There's lots you can do with a bioengineering degree, and I'll go into some of that in a minute, but we want to make sure students are aware of those different opportunities, and then we want to provide them with steps and tips of how to get to their desired career goals. And then we also want to provide networking and job opportunities so that they actually have those positions. For the industry partners, if we're doing events with them, we want to make sure it's worthwhile their time if they're working a full job to come back and help out with our student chapter. So we want to give them an opportunity to announce job opportunities and meet potential candidates. And we also want to provide industry partners for an opportunity to give back and help shape the future of the bioengineering community. A lot of our industry speakers are bioengineering alums, and so they kind of remember when they were in our shoes, and it's nice for them to come back and help us get to where they are now. And then finally, just for a chapter, we want to make sure that we're exposing University of Maryland bioengineering to our local industry so that they know what we're learning here and why we would make great employees in their companies or industries. So just getting our name out there and our reputation. So as I mentioned, I was going to go over where our students go after graduation. These are some of the main 3 areas. We have a lot of students going into industry, and the main ones you might think of are biopharmaceuticals and drug development, and then also medical devices and technology. We do also have a lot of students go into careers such as technical consulting and systems engineering, though, because the engineering degree provides that ability. And then we also have a lot of people going into government and regulatory industry. Because we're University of Maryland, we are located right next to DC, so we especially have easy access to all the Washington, D.C., NIH, NIST, FDA, all of those right in our backyard. A lot of our students also go on right after undergrad to either master's or PhD programs. And then also we have a fair amount of students going into medical school. And so because of this wide range, we want to make sure that we provide professional development and industry opportunities for all of those areas. Moving on, I wanted to speak today about what some of our professional and industry events are. And they include guest speakers, career fair preparation events, career fairs themselves and company booths, lab tours, alumni and graduate school panels, and competition teams. And we'll go into each of those in a minute. But so just providing a wide range of events really encourages students to get involved in whatever they're most interested in. So how do we set up these events? Well, there's a lot of students on the line, so if you're on the board, of your student society, then we want to help you make the most of it. And so these are some of the ways we reach out and get industry partners to come in. First, through bioengineering alumni. Those are some of the easiest targets because they were just in your shoes a few years ago, and they obviously like your university and would want to help out probably. We also use a lot of the same repetitive speakers year to year, the major ones that everyone likes to come out to. You can reach out to your former managers and work contacts. I will probably be having my manager come in for MedImmune and speak sometime this fall. You can reach out to local companies in your area, professor contacts, talk to your engineering corporate relations director or your advisory board. And then also I would just like to note for any industry employers on the line that, at least from our UMD perspective, we're very happy to have any industry partners approach us first and say, hey, I'm interested in providing some kind of event for the students, whether or not it's a speaker or a lab tour. So certainly you can reach out to your local chapter and ask in advance if you would like to help out with any of those. So going into guest speakers, for these events we typically rent out and reserve one of the lecture halls or big rooms of our engineering buildings, and then we bring in a speaker from industry. We have these speakers last year, so we see mesoscale diagnostics, NIH, Scientific Biomedical Microsystems, FDA, Walter Reed, and a lot of these are actually even big names of the company coming in, like Dr. Wilbur, who was the co-founder of Mesoscale Diagnostics, a biotech company in our area. And this really helps expose students to what it would be like working in one of those companies. And for example, Dr. Wilbur from MSD, he, at the end of his talk every year, is like, if you want to come up and talk to me about full-time opportunities or internships at MSD, feel free to. And that's a great opportunity for students to get a personal and somewhat informal interaction with an employer in the area. For the next event we had was a career fair prep workshop. We actually just had this again this past week because we do it the day right before our career fair. And for this event we have an employer from Becton Dickinson come in, and she also is a bioengineering alum at University of Maryland. And she'll give a lot of tips on how to critique your resume and then also how to network and approach employers at the career fair. And students have found this very helpful to prepare for the career fair, and great tips on the resume from a biotech employer. Another type of event is the actual career fair and networking events. So the University of Maryland itself organizes the fall and the spring career fair. So as a BMES board, we don't really have to get very involved with the planning of that, but we certainly advertise it and encourage our members to go. We do a spring bioengineering specific networking event that our department sets up, but we also help advertise. But then we also try to get local companies to come in and have a booth where they can table for a few hours of the day in the main hallway of the engineering building, and students walking by can have a brief chat with the employer, drop off a resume, or get application tips. Another event type that we have is lab tours. So one important one to note is that we did last year was we went to the Institute for In Vitro Sciences, and so we organized transportation for that event, and it was pretty much an all-day event, and that worked by having the company give a talk about what it's like to work in that industry and what toxicity is and toxicology. And then we actually got to tour their lab and see a lot of their instruments and workspace, and then we got to conclude the day with a hands-on experiment of dissecting some of the alkalis and seeing how they use them in their instruments for their research. We also did a tour of the Smithsonian Institute of National Museum of Natural History, and that exposed bioengineering students to the genetic and bioinformatics research going on there. Finally, our last type of event we do for professional development are the following events. So for one, we do an alumni speaker panel. So we have a lot of UMD bio engineering alum coming in and speaking to us about what they got involved with at university that students can be doing now, how they applied for their current job, what they like about their specific company, what they like about their industry, what they don't like, and students can ask questions, and it's pretty informal, back and forth. So it's a great way for students to find out what working for different companies and industry is like, as well as meet students or meet employers of that company that they can network with for jobs later that are pretty willing to help as former UMD TERPs. We also do the same kind of similar idea with a graduate school panel. We invite a lot of our bioengineering graduate students to come speak to the undergraduates about what it's like to pursue a PhD or maybe a master's in bioengineering, and once again, what they did in undergraduate to prepare for it, how they applied, and what the application process is like, and what graduate school is like, and different tips and suggestions for that. We usually try to couple this event with a speaker from Kaplan Test Prep Services. We have a partnership with them, and they speak more to different study resources and what the actual GRE and other tests, like the MCAT and GRE, are like, and then have discounted study opportunities for them. And then finally, we compete in different competitions. One of our favorite ones is the Rube Goldberg competition that our Engineering Alumni Association hosts, and that is a competition from like bioengineering versus all the other engineering disciplines like mechanical, chemical, etc. And we build this Rube Goldberg machine that can complete a task that we receive a week in advance. So for that competition, we like to reach out to sponsors in the area. And last year we were sponsored by Beckman Coulter, and they help financially provide some of the material, and we get to interact with that company representative a bit. So this is pretty much the end of my presentation, but I just wanted to take a second too, as Aparna will mention, but it's definitely helpful to have a industry chapter in your area. So we at the University of Maryland do not actually have a industry chapter near us. Our closest one is probably Philadelphia, which is still over 2 hours away. So if anyone is interested in starting the Maryland DC chapter, that would be great to interact with University of Maryland and the other schools in the area. So now I'm going to pass the presentation on to Aparna Fralick, who's a member of the advisory board for BMES Research Triangle Park and also the Director of Business Development for NUVA Manufacturing Services. And I'll let her give a little bit more of her background now.
Thank you, Shannon, for an excellent presentation. As she mentioned, this is Aparna Fralick. I am located in the RTP Research Triangle Park area of North Carolina, right between Raleigh and Durham. In my current role as Director of Business Development for NUVA Manufacturing Services, we build many types of contract manufacturing for medical devices, parts of medical devices, or the full type product. Can't talk about which ones they are because we're under NDA for most of these products. Anything electromechanical or electromechanical in nature, we can build. My role on the advisory board is to help promote BMES throughout the industry in this area. When we started this adventure in 2015, we looked around and we didn't see that we had a chapter, an industry chapter. There was a chapter for the students, but nothing for the industry. And the sense actually came about not just from myself, but other industry folks here. As we started thinking about it, we really felt we had to answer that one question. Why should we have an industry chapter in our area? And looking at the benefits and communicating between us who are in the industry, we really wanted to grow biomedical engineering chapter in this area to improve network opportunities. Professional development was a big one. Business development opportunities with entrepreneurs and tech transfer from the universities to the mainstream industry to get them into the market. Recruiting opportunities and general development of BME community. The ones highlighted on my slide that are in bold are the ones we've done pretty well at. The other two we're working on. But really we felt the first step was to actually create the industry chapter here. When we looked around, I was actually surprised to find that there were not very many industry chapters nationwide, while there's around 146 or so student chapters. This got us thinking amongst ourselves, and we took the plunge to get it started at the end of 2015. In our area, the climate is just about right to start a BMES chapter. We're nestled amongst some very good universities, hospitals, medical schools, engineering schools, and a lot of clinicians as well as BME professionals that are graduating from UNC, Duke, and NC State, and others. We decided we're going to be that catalyst for BMES professionals in the area. Here's just a little infographic of where we're located in case you don't know. About 5 hours south of DC. In our chapter, we're not restrictive to only engineering folks. Anybody can be a BME professional. Engineers, software developers, entrepreneurs, scientists, clinicians, doctors, problem solvers, folks who are using engineering technology to advance human health and well-being. One of the neat things that we've done is gone cross-functional to the other industry chapters like ASME, SWE, IEEE, and invite them to our meetings as well to help grow the sense of a BMES community. We started our adventure for the BMES RTP in about November, December of 2015, and we had our first inaugural meeting in 2016, end of January 2016. Our members include folks from Teleflex, Becton Dickinson, Precision Lender, Humacyte, SPR Therapeutics, UNC Kickstart, NC State, AIT, and of course Nuva Manufacturing, where I'm from. There's a little nice photo of our industry holiday party last year. I want to give a little bit of a sense on the progress that we've made since we started. 2015, as I mentioned, we started getting the paperwork and the charter signed. In early 2016, we had our inaugural event, and we had various meetings throughout the year, speaker events, showcase, and network events. The network events and all of our events have been in the evening after work. That seems to be a good time for most professionals to be there. We also get students coming to our meetings occasionally when it fits in their schedule. In 2017, we've increased the amount of events, and we had one volunteer event that I will talk about later on in the presentation. We've actually had some breakfast events as well. We also decided to survey our attendees, which I will talk about to give you a sense of what kinds of topics mattered to our attendees. And we try to get our meetings and events centered around some of those topics that mattered. Here's a graph of the meeting topics versus attendees, just to give a sense of which meetings do better than others. Clearly, the industry showcase event at the Frontier, which is a think space here, incubator type space in our area, got the highest attendees. At that meeting, we had food, so pizza and beer was sponsored, and each one of the industry representatives had a chance to talk a bit about what their company did and what they were looking for. The second one that actually did quite well in attendance was the Helping Hand Project with UNC, and I'll describe that a little bit further. If any of you are thinking about starting an industry chapter or already having an industry chapter, I can certainly send our survey template to you to try in your own area. We use SurveyMonkey. It was easy to do. The first tip I can offer is to know your audience. Every market's different. Every BMES community may be different. So find out what your attendees want to hear, participate in, and talk about. In our case, our survey came out and said folks want to know about career paths. They want to know more about emerging technologies. They want to know a bit more about regulations and standards. Emerging markets was number 4, and clinical or clinician perspective rounds out the top 5. In biomedical engineering, one of the key things we're trying to solve is how do we improve or create new technology for human health and well-being. These top 5 topics really touch on all those areas to drive new opportunities, new business, and new jobs. The second tip I can offer is to keep the events simple and focused. So each networking event has a particular purpose. We don't try to combine too many purposes. Last night, we had just a networking social event, and that's really all we talked about, was networking and communicating with the others in the area. And we had a fairly good attendance last night and a chance to talk about new ideas. So you can see the networking social event was viewed as most attractive to create the community here. Outreach, community service, panel discussions, and professional development also help our attendees. Tip 3, we don't get a lot of money from the national organization, so we really rely heavily upon our sponsors. Some of the best sponsors have been the local companies in the area as well as law firms. Last night, there was a law firm that sponsored our meeting. That was Passe IP Group. We also advertise using social media and to the other cross-functional engineering communities, BSME, SWE, ASME, and IEEE. We use LinkedIn, MailChimp, Meetup, Eventbrite, and just simple emails. Best tip number 5. On all events, business cards are important. A lot of exchange of business cards go on during our social events and every event. I know on the student chapter side, the main goal is to get a job after they get their degree. Coming to these events have your business card ready to send to and give to the other industry professionals looking to hire. Pictured here is a give back event that we did with the Helping Hand mission of UNC, where everybody at the event, engineers, clinicians, anybody interested in creating and building hands for children who don't have hands. One side of the room was actually assembling the robotic hands, and the other side of the room was solving the problem of how to attach the hands to the limbs that the children who didn't have hands. That was such a success that next year we will do it again and attract even more folks. Last night, one of the gentlemen I was speaking to actually volunteered their company's location to have our second anniversary event at their facility. Again, just a bit of our progress. We've scheduled meetings at various times throughout the year. Our meetings range from relevant topics, to speakers, to general networking. Engaging in give back or volunteer events where we can have deep interaction is important. And like I said, we boost attendance by inviting the other engineering societies as well. Every single meeting, we have first-timers. So the momentum is growing in our area. Just wanted to go over the benefits for industry. It matters to myself in industry as well as the rest of the industry in this area to have a strong BMES industry presence chapter in this area. Professional development, workshops, leadership, and management, quality control, regulation, it all affects biomedical products. The industry gets to grow professional networks. We can hear from renowned speakers or speakers on specific topics. Access to world-class faculty, researchers in the local universities. Networking and recruiting top BME students is important. This is a great way to connect to the student chapters as well. Opportunity to act and react with local physicians and clinicians to solve their problems through technology. Promote this industry in our area. And of course, business opportunities. Definitely want to grow business opportunities for the industry as well. It leads to more jobs. If you don't already have an industry chapter in your area, now might be a great time to start. The process is quite simple on the website for BMES, and it doesn't take long at all. Just needs a dedicated team of individuals to push it along. We're fortunate here in RTP that we do have a good board to keep this going. I'm complete at this moment. If there's any questions, please feel free to jump in. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna and Shannon both. That was a great job on both of your behalf. I think you shared a lot of great information and a lot of knowledge for all of the viewers that will help them engage industry much more effectively with their BMES chapters. So we've been receiving some questions throughout the webinar, and we're going to go through some of these as we have time. So please stay on and listen to the answers. We'll address these to both Shannon and Aparna as they apply. And please continue to submit questions if you have any through the chat box. That would be wonderful, as we're happy to take more. So I think this is a question for both Shannon and Aparna. Someone asks, as a recent college graduate, is there a way for me to engage with either of these chapters? So you've graduated college, and how can you engage with a BMES student chapter? Also, how can you engage with a BMES industry chapter, or what's advice on that? So let's start with Shannon from the student perspective.
From the student perspective, there's certainly opportunities for recent college graduates to interact with our chapter. If you're still local to your college, if they have a student by BMES chapter, then they might do events such as alumni panels, as I mentioned we do, and those would be a great thing to get involved with. For our student panels, we don't even necessarily sometimes have to have all the speakers in person. We can have someone Skype in if they really want to. Or you could have your own specific event of being a speaker and sharing about your experiences in industry, or coming back as a 2 or 3 year out of college alum, like our Becton Dickinson employee does before she leaves the resume critique sessions and the networking tips for the career fair prep event. So just serving for those different events. Or if you see that your company has job opportunities, just emailing the posting to the student chapter president is a great way for you to continue to interact. I'm going to pass it over to Verna now, if she has any thoughts about
those are great.
interaction.
Those are great points, Shannon. My other advice would be to actually show up to some of the meetings if you can. We actually had one of our events earlier this year where I guess a gentleman out of the Atlanta area wanted to see what was happening at our chapter and drove up to see it. And once he was here, he just ended up making a lot of contacts at our chapter at RTP. So show up, reach out with emails, phone calls. As a student, you got to be a bit aggressive on your own to seek out the opportunities that you're looking for.
Great. And to add to that from Aparna, I've attended a few events with the RTP Industry chapter, and I've seen similar things from attendees. I know some people have driven 2 and 3 hours across the state to come to some of the networking events that RTP chapter has thrown, so that's really outstanding. Just to go the extra mile and kind of to reach out and make new contacts in a very relaxed environment. So
it means a lot to industry as well, because we see the tenacity and heart that the student wants to put into biomedical engineering. So it matters to industry.
Yep, that's fantastic. So keeping on with this trend, let's see a few more questions we've got from the audience. So here's a question. It says, when reaching out to industry members who might not be in an official BMES industry chapter, how should BMES student chapters advertise events to make them appear to a wide range of industry professionals? So I guess this is more geared towards you, Shannon. How should student chapters advertise their events to kind of promote to a wide range of industry professionals in the area, which sounds kind of like your situation in Maryland with the various government agencies and companies?
So my advice for this is that you start off saying a little bit about what your society does, so that you're an undergraduate or whatever your population is of your chapter, student chapter at whatever university, and that you offer bioengineers a lot of professional development opportunities, and that you're looking to interact with XYZ company because a lot of your students have expressed interest in that industry. So I should also mention that a lot of our events are like our guest speakers and all is usually just one industry partner coming in at a time and having their own industry event or things like that. So when we send those invitations, they're often very personalized to whatever speaker or company it is. So we kind of tailor the introduction email to that company. But we can share that we do a lot of guest speakers, and they're well attended by students who want to learn more about that industry or networking in that industry. And we certainly want to keep that wide range of industry professionals, whether or not it's biomedical, instrumentation, or pharmaceuticals, or regulatory, or other industries. So just kind of explaining what your chapter is and why the students would benefit and why the industry partner would probably benefit would just be my advice.
Awesome. And I don't know if Aparna, if you have anything else to add, kind of from the industry chapter perspective, how to maybe advertise and collaborate with these student chapters.
I think Shannon said it quite well. Personalize your message as to what you're looking for. Definitely know the area of biomedical engineering you want to work in, whether it's more biotissue, is it devices specific, is it diagnostics area. It's such a broad field and cross-functional field. As a student graduating, you just need to be specific about what you want to do and then start to reach out for help in those areas. And like Shan said, customize your notes, personalize your notes.
Great. So we have another question. I think this one is geared a little more towards you and the industry side, Aparna. So this person asks, if the area you're located in doesn't have many BME companies, is it still worthwhile to start up an industry chapter? So what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And the reason why I say that is the wave of the future I see with all the biometrics and aging and health as a big concern overall. There are new companies coming up all the time. And my advice would be to start a chapter like we did and invite the cross-functional engineering groups. So invite Society of Women Engineers, IEEE, ASME, and the others, Plastics Engineers, Society of Plastic Engineers, and start to create your own ecosystem of how you can develop and be an entrepreneur in a way to come up with new products. Does that answer your question?
That's great.
Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think, you're right. It's always worthwhile to start an industry chapter in your area, especially if you have dedicated people like you mentioned earlier. And if you can collaborate with some other, engineers or professional groups, societies, that only bolsters your success rate.
Absolutely. We continue to do it here as we're such a young chapter.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So on that note, Aparna, we have a few other questions kind of related to the starting up an industry chapter. I know it's kind of a relatively new thing that's come up in the last few years. So, for example, a few questions. What were some obstacles that you and your team in the RTP chapter ran into when starting this new chapter, and how quickly were you able to advertise and gain new members?
So I think the first obstacle we had was money and getting sponsors. So once we started advertising and going to each one of the industry people that were on our board, it became pretty clear that if we start, people will come. And that's exactly what's happened. So with social media, it's easy to advertise. So start it, advertise, and people will come. And the first few meetings, we definitely had to request our companies, individual companies, to contribute. But once they found out how beneficial this is, it started happening with the snowball effect.
Yeah, that's great, and I can actually agree to that because I think I attended my first meeting in RTP maybe late 2015, and then I attended the social last night, and it's grown tremendously just in a matter of less than 2 years. So it's been an outstanding job with the advertisement. So this next question is geared towards the student chapters. So Shannon, someone's basically asking, what's a good approach to reach out to federal agencies for talks? Maybe is there and to add to that, I would like to add to that, is there a different approach you take when reaching out maybe to like a federal agency, a government agency, versus a large biomedical pharmaceutical company? If you could comment on that.
Sure. So I guess for some background, the majority of our events and industry speakers, I would have to say, are probably contacts that someone on the executive board knows, or one of our professors, like our faculty advisor, knows, or someone that's already been interacting with our chapter a lot, or the department in general. So oftentimes we don't even have to really work that hard to make those connections, just continuing those relationships. Like our tour of NIH last year was with someone's old internship boss and things like that. So some advice for that, I would look in your chapter and see if you have anyone that did internships at NIH, FDA, BMES, or any of those things, places, and seeing if they could maybe connect you with their mentor or manager. You can certainly try the strategy of just emailing maybe like the HR department or something like that and seeing if they could connect you with anyone. But it is sometimes easier to have a personal contact or like a specific person in mind that you're emailing. For example, we have bioengineering department seminars that are open to all bioengineering undergrad, graduate students, and faculty members. And last week we had someone from the FDA, one of the branch chiefs, Perceiver, come in and speak to the whole department. And then we had a few of students had the opportunity to have lunch with him after the talk, and I might reach out to him again now that I have his business card to set up an event later. So it's a little harder probably for you at University of Delaware, given that you're not as close as we are from industry, and so you might want to try to find someone that lives closer to, like, more in the middle of the government agencies in Delaware so that they could actually feasibly commute to your school. However, you could look into different online platforms or other ways to interact with these industries as well. You can certainly reach out to me, though. I saw your question. My email is in these slides that will be sent out. It's just Shannon Larson, my name, 21@gmail.com, or you can Google the UMD or the Bioengineering Student Chapter list, and I believe it with all the chapter emails, so you can email our specific BMES email. We'll probably be in touch with you anyways regarding the research fair that you and Johns Hopkins and our school usually puts on together for BMES anyways, but I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much, Shannon. So a question I have, I'm kind of curious about, because both your chapter at the University of Maryland, Shannon, and the industry chapter in North Carolina, Aparna, both of you seem to host quite a few events per year, and I know everyone has extremely busy schedules, both students and industry professionals. So this is just kind of, I guess, a planning process. I'd like to hear from both of you, your perspectives. How early do your chapters start planning and securing different speakers for these events? And is there like a certain number of events you strive for per semester or per quarter in the year? I just think you're doing an outstanding job in juggling all of that. I would love to hear a little more. So we can start with Aparna since Shannon just answered.
Sure. A couple things. We have a committed team, and it matters. It matters to us. And that would be my advice for pretty much anything you do in your life. If it matters to you and you can commit to it, you find a way. In our case, we have both. It matters to us, and we're committed to it. We like to spread out the meetings, networking events throughout the year. At least 1 or 2 per quarter is what we would like to do. And we have a mix of fun and education because, like you said, industry professionals are busy, travel quite a bit for work. But going back to what I said, if it matters and it matters enough with a committed team, we'll make it happen.
From the student perspective regarding how often and frequently we have events, we do host a lot of events from our UMD BMES chapter, and we keep increasing them each year, it seems. And what I would say for our target numbers would be probably around 3 or 4 guest speakers per semester, so that's approximately 1 or 2 per month. We try to make sure they're not like within the same week of each other or anything like that, because if you do too many events like too close to each other, you're going to lose attendance because students won't go to all like 3 events that are right back to back. Then in addition to the guest speakers, we usually do around 1 lab tour per semester, trying to go to tour the actual facilities or do a hands-on project there. We also do 1 or 2 outreach events per semester. So we do a big event each semester. One semester is the high school outreach event, and the other semester is the middle school outreach event. And then we do a department-wide blood drive that our BMES chapter hosts once per semester as well. And then we have usually like the graduate student speaker panel in the fall and then the alumni speaker panel in the spring. So just kind of balancing it out with all the other events. And it's going to depend a lot about when your speakers can come in. So to answer the other question about how early we set them up, we do try to reach out to the speakers like at least a month before we want to come in. And it might take a while before you start actually setting up that date because you're just kind of talking at first and seeing if they're willing to come in. And then sometimes they're even willing to wait for you to figure out some of your other main events so that they don't overlap. But we usually have a fair amount of events per semester.
I was going to mention we have a planning session maybe 2 or 3 times a year at the very most at a lunchtime. And then we're quite efficient in banging out what we're going to attempt to do. We just have to line it up and execute. So I would have to say we don't have to spend a lot of time planning in general.
Piggybacking off of what Aparna said, having those meetings with your executive board ahead of time is really helpful. For example, for this fall semester, we tried to do a lot of our planning over the summer where we were less busy with schoolwork, and that's where we reached out to at least 2 or 3 of our guest speakers or the employer running the career fair prep event because we knew that would be right at the beginning of the school year when the career fair was. We also scheduled our blood drive then, and we've already picked the date for our outreach event, even though it's not until mid-November, because a lot of the bigger events, too, where you need to reserve room space and other things like that, it just takes a little bit of planning for getting those organized.
One thing that's helped us is for each event, a different board member would be the chair of that meeting. So a chair for each one of the events, and that levels the load on the whole team.
One general piece of advice I'd have for student chapters that our UMD chapter actually doesn't even do as great of a job on and we want to improve is that we want to better keep track of our active involved alumni once they graduate. So like this past semester of graduates in the spring, we want to send out like surveys right before they graduate and leave about where they're heading and if they're interested in staying in touch for potentially coming back for a speaker event, because we haven't really had those kind of surveys or feedback in the past. And we tried to do it last semester at the end of, but it was too like right at graduation, and so we didn't get a high response level. So that would be another recommendation I'd have for student chapters.
I think that's a great approach, Shannon, especially to retain some of that information before everyone kind of heads off to their own professional career. So I want to thank both of our speakers today, Shannon and Aparna. They did an outstanding job, and I think they really explained how to better, integrate both forms of BMES chapters to have just a better environment for biomedical engineers in general in BMES. So this is all the time we have for questions, and it's going to conclude our webinar. I thank you for joining us, but I ask you to please stay on the line afterwards just to take the quick brief survey. Also, a few upcoming events we'd like to acknowledge. So next month is the annual meeting, the BMES annual meeting in Phoenix, Arizona. So we hope you will join us, and also keep on a lookout online for more of these professional development webinars, ranging from all types of topics that might be useful to you. So we hope you'll join us, and we thank you for being on this call today.